Are you?
Hello.
Hello?
Hello, Gilder.
Yeah, let me make sure you're audible here. Say, come on.
Come on.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah.
Echo? I can hear echo.
Okay, I'll turn down my...
You're under arrest.
Okay, is that better?
Yeah. Okay. So now introduce yourself. Tell us everything about yourself.
Everything?
Yeah, of course. Everybody wants to know.
Oh my gosh.
Everybody wants to know who you are, especially Jacob, okay? I have a feeling
Okay.
Jacob especially wants to know who you are, okay?
Okay.
It's true.
Yeah, so I am...
Tell me.
Well, Lucy knows who I am, but,
Who are you?
so, yeah, so, like, I'm US based,
Yeah, based. We all know you're based, but tell us who you are.
based. Uh, so I'm 36. I'm US based. I'm in the Midwest region. I'll go ahead and say that like I'm from like the Missouri.
36 and based.
Yeah, I'm trans. I'm a trans woman.
Yeah, you're not one of those non-binary pinger losers.
No, non-binary people aren't losers.
It's
And
okay.
what's
We're doing a
and
bit
what?
for you have to see the segment that was before this to understand.
Yeah, and we can kind of talk about like how even cis sexism affects non-binary people. This was kind of
Okay,
like
but
a...
first you'll have to introduce us to the concept. Okay, let's take
Sure,
it
like
one step at a
it's a
time.
very...
Okay.
Right. It's very interlinked with transphobia, right?
Right.
But it's different. It's a different type of discrimination.
Okay. So what is cis sexism? Tell us what the term means. Let's start here.
Yeah. So
Hello?
what I'll do, let me
You're roboting out a bit.
Oh shoot. Hang on. Give it a minute.
Okay, I'll give it a minute and then I will giggle. Gosh, I wonder if we will be able to reach 500 today. Chrono Trigger is like super. We will play Chrono Trigger on stream, don't you worry about that.
Okay, it should be like Wi-Fi connected now.
You should always be connected by cable.
I know, but I can't.
You can?
Is it better now?
Yeah, it's better. Okay, tell us about cis sexism.
Let me send you this article so you can... I don't know if you want to bring it up.
The article? Is it a link to a page?
Yeah.
Okay.
One moment. Oh my gosh, Discord, please. My phone is dying. Okay, hang on. I'm gonna close YouTube.
Oh.
Don't do this to me. I'm so sorry, Lizzie.
This. Oh, yeah, cute and busy. There's a Fantasia. We also play Star Ocean.
Why is my phone being so horrible?
Let me see. Browser. Oh, what is the browser? Boom.
Okay, forget it. I'm just gonna go off. I'm not gonna be able to. The main thing here
Explain
is,
it with your own words.
yeah, I'll do my best here without.
What is cis sexism? Explain it to me. I don't get it.
Yeah.
Is it a
Right.
spice? Is it a country? What is it?
The best way that I can understand, like the way that the way it's evolved, even.
Let's start with what it is. What it means.
It starts off with it basically starts off with the belief,
right,
that trans people don't exist.
Okay, that's a wild claim to make. So let's go
Right.
from here.
But you understand, like, the when how
So
like
basically, people that claim to be trans are just delusional or something.
right, yeah, like it's just like they're not real. These people are delusional. They're mentally ill.
Right. So basically,
like,
cis sexism is what feeds into the so-called gender critical movement, right?
correct, yeah, like it's very, bioessentialistic. Like
Right,
it's very it works off the notion that, like, oh, you must be just
Confused.
like a trans woman is just a homosexual man that is just delusional or whatever.
So a trans woman that likes women is just like a straight man?
Right, yeah, they don't see it as real. Like they just see it. They're very bioessentialistic, so that
how do they
whatever you're, yeah.
Okay, so I guess the first question would be, how do they square that belief with the whole consensus of the medical world?
They don't care about it. Listen, like, they don't read it. They don't care. They think it's all fake science. It's phony.
Fake news. So what's the real science?
like, these are people that really don't even care to read any. They will either come up with their own studies, or they will. I mean that's what gender criticals are. They'll use anything that fits their narrative of, and even going back to studies that have been disproven, or everything that we went through the whole ex-gay movement and everything else. They'll just bring back up. Obviously that trans people just need to be it's like you see it pop up in the UK again, where it's like the gender exploratory therapy stuff, where they think, it buys into this whole notion that it's just like, oh, you're just confused about your sexuality. You're just trans women are just, and it even goes into like how it just like eliminates like bi people. It buys into whole biphobia and everything, because they assume that trans women are just homosexual men or something, and it's just crazy. Like it ignores even bi people.
So how does that belief actually, how do they square the existence of non-binary people?
And so for instance, the best way, the reason I want to talk about it is like, how it's different from transphobia in a sense. They're similar. It's hard for them to actually deny. And like in the modern day, it's hard for them to actually deny that trans people exist, but they want to anyway. They think they'll go back and they'll buy into all this narrative that it's just like, they're just mentally ill. They just need help. They just need to be conversion therapy back into their cis world, and they
But
don't need treatment.
isn't
You know,
yeah
the way it affects trans people differently than transphobia is what I have come to notice, and especially with like gender critical movements, is like they're not and it's written into the bills, right?
right
They're not saying in all of these bills, like spewing out like garbage throughout the country. They're not saying we wish to ban trans women from sports.
right
Trans people are not mentioned in the bill. What they are doing is writing cis sexism into the bill.
but
They're invoking all these biology. They're not recognizing trans people as trans people. They're not targeting trans people they're
but
erasing.
isn't that still a form of isn't that still a form of transphobia at the end of the day?
Yeah, it's very similar.
Like
It's like, well, how can you not recognize that trans people exist? Well, it's like, well, easily. We just write you out of existence.
yeah, but that is at the end of the day transphobia, no?
Yeah, it's similar. It's so similar. But if you were just being transphobic, it would be easy to identify. If you were to say, it would be discriminatory. You would say,
But it is
you would
discriminatory.
literally write in the bill, we wish to ban trans women from sports.
Yeah, but it is discriminatory by
And that's obviously
by
discriminatory.
exclusion, like
Yeah, exactly. So
like
you'd be like, well, you can't just like that's just discrimination on trans people.
like think of it like this is how we think of systemic racism. It also does not explicitly mention people of
Right.
color, of black people, you know,
Right.
but it's still systemic
It's
racism
this,
against
yeah, it's
black.
the systemic part of it where they're
You
trying
know,
to just like say, well, you don't actually exist. Like
so it's
we're just
still
we're just gonna write you out of the
transphobia on a systemic level, you know.
yeah, it's something like that. Something like that, yeah. And that's really what is so eliminationist about.
It's more insidious,
Yeah, it's more insidious. It's more.
and
It
that
says
makes
like,
it more dangerous.
and it's easier to pass.
Yeah, that makes
It.
it far more dangerous because a
Mm-hmm.
person that does not see it can say, but this bill is just a harmless bill that wants to make sure that sports are fair or whatever else you want to say, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it's invoking biology, and they're not labeling trans people as trans people. They're not
Yeah,
saying.
they're just saying we want sports to be fair for um, girls, for example, right? So we
Yeah,
want those biological. Of course, those
the
things are
biological males.
also.
Yeah.
Of course, those things are also pretty arbitrary and oftentimes hurt cis women as well. Like,
Mhm.
you know, the testosterone level things. There are cis women that are sort of excluded from sports on those bases and discriminated against. There are a whole slew of articles that's especially against black women, that's you know, and racism enters into this as well. When people will just bigots will jump on it and say, "Oh, this is a guy," you know, to
Yeah.
about a cis woman. So those
Yeah,
things are very
the whole gender critical movement assumes that it wants to say, well, trans women are just men, and that whole they
yeah, but
don't.
it goes as far. It
Yeah.
can go as far as to start as to start calling cis women men as well.
Oh yeah, yeah. It has. disastrous effects, of course.
So you know.
Ripples. Yeah. The other what it the other thing that it assumes, it's not just that they don't see trans people as real.
Mm-hmm.
What is like the effect of that? What it assumes is it says that the way that they write it, like the bills that are coming into my state right now, it says
All right. Can you talk about
what
those
what
bills a bit?
what they yeah, what they do, the way that they write this bill is they say it assumes that everyone is it basically assumes that everyone is cis
Right. Let's
and
see.
gender
H
and
fruit.
quote
H fruit
unquote.
says, "I'd say it marks a shift in rhetoric rather than some sort of an emergent ideology." I
Yeah,
think I would
they're
agree.
trying to rewrite what gender is and everything.
Yeah, or
Uh,
rather, they try to
Base it
fit
back
it
into.
into
Mhm,
fit it into a specific thing that
mhm,
was the norm in a specific society, right?
mhm.
Because it was
Th-
not
th-
the norm always across the board. Let's keep this in mind, right?
Yeah. So what it does is assumes everybody is cis, and and this is a trans healthcare bill where they'll fight it as child abuse, and if you
Right.
treat trans children up to 18, and we'll take you away and ship you away and everything
Yeah,
else.
because let's keep in mind that the
Because
cis.
it's obviously wrong. I'm going to put it in layman's terms
Mhm.
for this bill, but they what they do is they say, well, it's obviously wrong to gender transition a cis child because everybody is cis.
Right. Let's keep in mind that even the term cis is pretty emergent, right? They're like
Mm,
if we assume that there were cultures in which we had third genders or even more, then all of them were sort of um, there were cultures in which if you had the third gender, then that was also part of the norm, right?
mhm,
So, like the norms were not the same everywhere, and
mhm,
even in Judaism, you have like six of them or more.
mhm.
So,
Yeah, I mean it's a complete. I mean the people that sponsor the bill,
mhm,
like their views are specifically that they believe that trans people don't exist, that they're
right,
not real. These people are just mentally ill,
yeah,
basically. It's just like these are their views when they write these are the sponsors of these bills.
yeah,
They're not people that are like, well, we need to protect the children
yeah.
and
Of course,
and of course, like no, these people that sponsor these bills are a combination of people that want to enforce biblical values
right.
that have teamed up with gender critical people
Mm-hmm.
that work off of the notion that like this whole thing is just craziness and like trans people don't actually exist and this is just harming children. We they start from the notion that like we'll just write trans youth out of existence
Yeah,
first.
they basically um, erase the group from existing, erase the category, right?
Yeah, they'll just write you out of existence
Right.
as a trans youth. You just can't you
You cannot exist, basically.
even the more innocent people that will like be voting on this thing will be like, well, you know, maybe we're right. Maybe some of these people are right, and like we should like be cautious with this, and like maybe people can't know their gender until 18 years old. This like completely ridiculous,
Yeah, right. Because we already have a lot of knowledge about
right?
this, right? It's not something that has not been observed,
Mhm.
and
And it's not to say that like all trans people will realize their gender young at a younger age or anything, but a lot of trans people do.
But
And
a lot of people go into like long periods of
Mhm.
denial,
I mean,
right?
the way that they have
Like
studies
the
about
way the
gender.
way the way certain norms work. Many people will have thoughts about themselves when very young, but then they will be basically forced into a period
Yeah,
of
and it's hard to put
being
it's
in
hard
denial
to
about it, right? They will
yeah, it's hard to put words
basically
to it,
convince
especially if you're
themselves into thinking they're cis, you know?
Mhm. Yeah, especially if you've grown up into like a literally an indoctrinated environment like me, where it's you know
Like
right wing Christian ideology and
yeah, like I would think that's the case for me for sure.
the whole spiel, right? And you're just
Or if your whole country is like that.
you've got feelings all the way since you were a kid, but
Right,
heck,
but you sort of were,
mhm,
um, that you sort of convinced yourself that maybe those feelings are not correct.
yeah, you try to, I've
That you
my
should
experience.
like,
I won't go through my whole experience, but like, yeah,
yeah, right.
a lot of people that have been like grown up in these environments and what they end up doing and like they did before with like the whole oh so now you're trans at like
Yeah,
26
exactly, or more.
or whatever, okay, like this must be rapid onset gender dysphoria, this must be whatever narrative they've constructed over the
Like,
years,
for example, I know,
aside from just a survivorship bias. you
yeah,
know
exactly.
um
Or like I met friends to make, we didn't make a movie, but like my friend's current partner, fiance, I think she said, you know, I am pretty pro LGBT because since I'm from an LGBT family, my mom came out as a trans woman now at 60 something plus, you know?
oh wow.
Yeah, yeah. She decided to transition at 60 plus, you know? So sometimes it just takes time to get
Mhm.
to terms with those sort of feelings, you
Yeah.
know? And I asked
And with
the girl, so how do you feel about your parents changing, like right now, you know? And she said, wow, it must have been so difficult all those years, you know?
hmm
So it's pretty cool to have like a child that's so understanding, right?
yeah.
That her first answer was that it must have been so difficult to keep it bottled in for so many years.
hmm Yeah, it was. I mean, heck, it was hard for me. Just the
Yeah,
the the third of that. Um, it's devastating to lose like a third of your like if you think about it, like from the age of 1 to like it's what I'm gonna say from the age 2 to 3,
right.
which is when people start to recognize differences in like when we there's studies how we everybody develops starts to develop gender differentiation,
Mm-hmm.
trans or cis, everybody recognizes gender differentiation starting at the age 2 and 3.
Mm-hmm.
Gender and sex differentiation, you're noticing different things about the world, like
Right.
oh mom, dad, um the girl, uh, heck, mom goes like this, dad goes like this, potty
Right.
training. You're differentiating things in your mind that young.
Yeah.
And whether you have all the words for these things is, that develops over time.
Right.
But you start to recognize the difference, and people line up in different line. Like heck, and when I was in school, you were forced to line up in different lines, and you're forced into this world where whether you feel comfortable in it or not, you're going to be lined up into different things that What do you like? You just feel a general discomfort about laying up into the boys' line, you know. Like
Or
you're a boy, you go over there. Like, what do you? No, I don't want to. You know, but
right,
like these aren't. We're not saying that you know for sure you're this or that, but you've got that discomfort. You've got these things can easily develop just like anybody.
right, yeah, of course.
If like a cis girl was to be like, no, you go into the boys' line, you'd be like, what are you talking about? No, it's weird.
Yeah,
Anyway.
even cis people like that have like can be more boys, so to speak, and want to play with the boys, but there's still this divide,
Mhm,
right?
mhm,
Yeah, that's why certain schools are actually in certain countries for sports. While we're at the topic of sports, decided to just let boys and girls play together when it comes to soccer/football,
mhm.
at a school level, because it
So
doesn't
um,
matter.
yeah. So like I find it just so crazy that we've like gone like when I was growing up, I had nothing.
Right,
I had nothing. There was no talk about it in school. There was no talk about it. Any representation on the internet or in media was
right,
negative, and like I didn't exist.
right. Well, you
It
can
didn't
take
change.
it.
It didn't change the fact that I'm me, and I
Right,
had the feelings, and I couldn't explain it. I felt like an alien,
right.
you know. Um, growing up in that, and then being like, God, I wish it was so much better for every other trans person. Like
Well,
I don't want any other trans person to go through what I did.
the US is still light years ahead right now when it comes to
And
it, like compared to Poland, light
yeah,
years ahead.
and we started to have acceptance in schools where have we would have safe spaces. Like I saw there was this period where we started to give people space
Right,
and talk about these things, and it wasn't a big deal. And then all of a sudden you've got this right-wing reactionary movement where it's just like, oh, it's groomer and all,
yeah,
the whole narrative all back again, and it's just like, what the hell? Like, absolutely crazy and their thoughts are just like what it does is like this whole like and a lot of this has come over from the UK. I you know J.K. Rowling, all this gender critical movement. I it's a lot of it's come from the UK over to the US. It's spilled over because we're
well,
globalized.
the
A lot
far
of
right
people forget we're so
the
globalized.
far right movement is a very international project.
Yeah. We're very globalized. So when you look,
Yeah,
like I'll look into how these gender critical movements work all over the globe,
right.
and they just talk to each other. You've got J.K. Rowling talking to Matt Walsh. You've got
Yeah, of course.
Twitter, it's a literal Nazi cesspool now,
Yeah,
right?
so yeah,
Um, but they've got their narrative. You've got like different detransitioners that have started a whole
movement.
X-trans movement
Yeah,
that are coming back out and saying, "Oh God, that was so wrong." They're retransitioning. They're talking or speaking out against it, like Kai, and it's just the way that they want to frame it is just like this. It's like the whole Nazi experiments, and like it's all crazy. And, they'll make it as gross as possible
yeah,
to get people's disgust factor into it. Um,
right. Yeah, that
and
is a
thinking
strong
that
factor, yeah.
and thinking that this is just something that people don't actually feel, and like they're just delusional, and trans people don't exist. That's their motive. It's genocidal in its nature,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And that's what we need to notice more than just like trans people or transphobia.
Oh.
It's not just like, well, I don't know about like, I've never been around a trans person, but I feel weird about having a trans woman. Are they actually a woman? Do they behave like like, are they actually a man? I don't know. I feel strange about this. Like, I'm a little bit, or I just don't want trans people around me. They're fine. They're human beings, but like, I'm a little bit phobic. I'm a little scared of trans people around me.
Yeah, but
But
transphobia is
they're recognizing that they're trans. They're recognizing trans people as they talk about it in a transphobic sense. They're not saying trans people don't exist and we need to write them out of existence.
yeah, but to be honest, I think even people that perfectly well and know and understand that trans people do exist will still use the narrative of pretending that trans
Right.
people don't exist. So it doesn't functionally matter if people believe that trans people exist or not. What matters is that it's a
It's the effect
convenient
of it.
narrative to
Yeah.
use, you know?
It's more the back end effect of it and how
Yeah,
it.
exactly.
Yeah. The back end effect is like, well, since feel this way, I'm just going to think about it in a very essentialist way. I'm going to
Oh,
frame
it's
it as
not
all.
even about feeling like this. It's just a useful tool to more effectively erase trans people. You
Right.
can even feel that the trans people do exist, but even if you feel that they do exist, it will still be a more effective tool in your arsenal to pretend that trans people are not real. You know?
Right. Yeah, the effect it has, and this is why I want to talk about it. We need to recognize the fact that people aren't just being transphobic. They're not just writing bills that say we need to ban the trans. They're
Yeah,
not just
never mind that the
writing bills.
Nazis literally burned books on gender research and sexuality. And
Yeah, and that's part of the genocidal nature of it. Like,
yeah,
it's not. They aren't. They know they can't write bills that say ban the trans person
right.
because it's obviously discriminatory.
Yeah.
They
So
have
it has
to.
to
They
be
have to.
discriminatory in a non-obvious way, of course. Yeah. Like, uh,
Yeah,
like we already have precedent with this when it comes to people of color. Yeah.
yeah, and you can't. And the reason we can't let
Like,
any of them pass, we have to fight them vigorously, no matter what it is.
yeah, of
Even if,
course, of
like,
course.
what we have to explain to people is, okay, I understand you may have reservations about trans people in sports, but oh my God, like, that is like so superfluous, because what you need to, like, if you are talking to people around you, you're trying to advocate for like
Mm-hmm.
just stop bills in your area. Like, you need to be like, look, we've gone from trans sports to banning all trans healthcare and banning them out of, like, banning discussion out of schools, banning them out of, like, bills on the table to ban us out of private life.
Banning social transition, banning
What they're
parents
trying to.
taking their children to a specialist. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And just talking to people very viscerally about like that, where it's
Yeah.
like, it's not like we understand, like, you've got these like, if you're talking to a normie, we
Right.
understand you've got like these reservations in sports. And I mean, think about it, how many trans people actually participate in sports? Like, this isn't the be all end all, but what they're doing with these bills is they're separating us. They're saying you're different. And
Mm-hmm.
then that's how they get their claws in, and then they wipe us out of existence because they're
Right.
trying to say that trying to put the wedge in there.
Yeah.
Uh,
And I,
they're writing cis sexism into those transports bills where it says, oh, you're biologically this, everybody's biologically this and that, and like, and they ignore gender altogether. They ignore.
well, they actually also ignore the biological realities of what sex is, but that's a whole different thing, right?
Yeah, and political categories. Like, this isn't how feminism started. Like,
Well, of course not, because
the reason
of course not.
feminism
Yeah.
started is because cis women, like they said, look, I'm more than my biological function.
Yeah, of course. Like the division of sex and gender started with feminism in a big way, right?
And that's how I talk to like a lot of like the people around me, like, or just like cis women that are just like, I don't know about this stuff. I'm like, look, you gotta wake up. Like, this isn't how we came up with like women as a political force.
Yeah.
Like, you were like, women were unable to vote. They were unable to. They had no bodily autonomy. They could not own property. They were simply a biological function to be the
Mothers.
breeding pod and mother.
Basically.
Like, that was it. That's all you were until women said, I'm a woman.
Yeah.
And you're going to respect me as a human being. I'm this category. Despite what, you're not going to boil me down to this.
Yeah.
And that started feminism.
Yeah.
So like,
fighting sexism, right? Like, it's like
yeah,
in the
it
famous.
did. Yeah, and that was the whole thing. And
like it's like
feminism has evolved.
Like in the famous book that I always want to talk about, Feminism is for Everybody by Bell Hooks.
Yeah. And I mean, that's how everything started, where we're just like, and they just want to boil
and they
everything
just want
back
to erase the progress. Yeah.
Feminism over the years became very like LGBT inclusive and wanting to break down barriers. And
because that's what it's all about, destroying sexism all across the board. Yeah.
And of course, gender criticals are anti-feminist.
No, they're very sexist to begin with, you know.
I've come across, I've worked hard and talked to a lot of.
I mean, there's a reason why they align so much with the right wing, right?
But like, your average cis woman today, like your average cis white woman in America, they're not. You'll find, like, if you talk to them.
Yeah, because
they're not.
An average woman is not a gender critical extremist, of course.
No, they're really not. Even in like,
I mean, it's in the name, radical, right?
Yeah, even in like in the Midwest and like the South, most women understand the concept of bodily autonomy. They've been a little bit brainwashed over the years or completely exited politics. But like, when you, like, for instance, one of the women that I talked to at work, they were just like, I was like, they didn't even know what Roe was. Roe v. Wade.
Right. It's not things that are just it's just like there aren't things, as from what I know, that are that talked about or explained, right?
Yeah, most often when I talk to when I get engaged with the women around me and talk to them about like the stuff, like, I can easily find, like, common footing. It's just like,
Yeah, of course.
where it's just like, you've lost your body. I never wanted you to lose your bodily autonomy, and they're attacking mine, and it's all interlinked.
Yeah, of course.
And easy allies. Easy allies. Like, there's no reason for people
Yeah, of course,
to.
there's a reason why when the Polish government has banned the abortion of damaged fetuses, this was a very big thing. A whole protest of women came out to the streets, and the leaders of those protests, there's a reason why they said we ally ourselves with all of the LGBT, right?
Mhm.
As well. The whole of
Yeah.
the LGBT is also the ally of this women's protest movement.
Mhm.
Yeah, there's a reason for that, right? That's the thing that you're saying.
Yeah. Well, like, for instance, like our community, your community, a lot of it's hard to find. Like, I know some cis women on Discord, but in general, most of our political communities, we have to realize, like, we have to do a little more outreach,
Right.
get involved in, like, our, like, I feel like a missing demographic is literally just trans people talking with cis women. We're not reaching them very well. Like your average normie around you. They're not being reached on a lot of, like, political discords. They're not being reached in, like, they're not very prevalent. Like, they may not watch, like, they're not subscribed to, like, Vosh or Zan very much, or, like,
Right.
these other political streamers. They're looking up hair tips on YouTube or what, travel tips. What, they're not very politically engaged. They did get politically engaged when Roe was removed, and discussions started happening. They got more involved.
Mm-hmm.
A lot of them are probably still on Twitter in that hellhole. Like, perhaps, but, like, just some things that I'm thinking about, in addition to, like, in addition to just talking about sexism, but trying to give people some ideas to help combat what's going on.
Mm-hmm.
I have, like, shared things, like, with my knowledge, with my political knowledge, and research that I've done, getting into the history of things, reading feminism. Like, I can easily get across to the women around me where that a lot of them they're not radical. They're not, like, down in this deep dark hole of, like, transphobia or anything. They're
Right.
just,
But that's
but they're,
the big problem is that
but they're, but
the
they're,
yeah,
but they just have a general, they may have, like, this general indoctrination of just, like, we need to protect the children. They're concerned white women everywhere. Concerned white women are everywhere. They're just concerned. Clap your hands, they're concerned. White women. We need to protect the children.
of course the big challenge with all this is that the bigoted radical feminists have already sort of recognized that they do not have
and
as much of a public support as they would like. So they have already, on a couple of occasions, openly stated that if they cannot go get the public support, then they will just go straight to the legislation level, and then you will just pass laws that will ban the things that they don't like. you know,
Mm,
but
mhm,
through bypassing the public support, right?
right. Oh, yeah, that's what's so awful about it. And in the U.S., like our political system is not. We don't have a direct democracy, um, and people actually have to be extremely engaged, or
Yeah,
you
or
have to like you literally have to get people excited. You have to be like this could be like the way we talk about like how I like literally telling people around you like this is what they're doing.
yeah,
Like this is what's happening. This is what it will boil like lead them down the road, and people start their eyes will start going, oh my gosh, you're right. Like this is, but I don't know.
yeah, and I
There's
also
just, there's a
think,
lot of people that are just they're just so far out there. They're not engaged. They're not. You can't get their support to go. Hey, like there's no reason that you can't get like garner people to say, hey, cis people, they don't have to be trans to go testify
right,
for bills and things. It doesn't always work, but if you had like a lot of support, it can help.
right,
And writing them and things like this, it doesn't always work. They may be that politically motivated,
right.
but it could help.
So
Um,
I also think that we should make it into just as much of an international project as the other side did, you know?
mhm, yeah,
Like,
because where they're drawing upon like in the United States, these like the GOP and like legislators, they're they're drawing from Russia. They're
right.
drawing from like
And vice
um,
versa, right? Like Putin at some point was
they've copy
talking
pasted the
about, like
Russian
Putin at some
bill.
point was talking about how J.K. Rowling is oppressed by the evil ideologies.
Oh yeah, it's just
And he blamed
it's
trans people for the degeneracy in Ukraine, you know? So,
yeah yeah. I'm gonna annex Ukraine because of
trans people,
because of trans people. It's insane.
yeah.
you know.
So we should push back on a equally international level, right? Like love and solidarity, as I often say.
The UN is doing work. I just don't know how much it's going to gain traction in redoing their. But they wanted focus. They put focus on this whole religious freedom versus LGBTQ rights, um, asking for support. Because like that's what they weaponize a lot, especially in the United States. And it's something that we have to realize. They're weaponizing, like with Christian nationalism and everything. That's what's very big. You've got the Christian nationalists allying with just general gender criticals with the political ideology. Um, not all Christian people are bad. I've found a lot of Christian allies um, around me on the internet. I've looked at organizations.
Oh,
Um,
Karasu is saying, not sure who you're talking to when it comes to drawing mod from other countries, but when it comes to the international aspect, Hungary's Orban did pass basically the don't
yeah,
say gay law, you know,
yeah, and
early
Orban.
this year. But it's not just a copy. There had been a cooperation between GOP and Hungarian Fidesz for a decade or decades now. Yeah,
Yeah,
it's not just copying. It's
and
like it's literal
Orban was
cooperation, right?
yeah, and Orban was heck. He was at the what do you call it? they're
We had Fidesz advisors who served as GOP advisor, right?
yeah, they're. I mean, Tucker Carlson's been in direct contact with Orban. He's getting ammunition from them.
So it is like there is an
He was
experiment
invited to
going on.
the GOP summit. I forget what it's called.
Yeah.
Yeah.
You have first experiment. You have the first experiment in Hungary, and then almost outsource it. Then these advisors bring back the tactics to GOP.
Right. Yeah, it's very obvious how.
Yeah, it's an international project, you know, like
Yeah,
when
I saw
yeah,
Vice News actually did a news piece on this, on like some young conservatives that were where they literally had like that link and talking about how they wanted to use what's going on in Hungary and use that
right,
as part of the thing. And
right.
I think Vice took it down because I've been trying to bring it back up for a long time and share it again. But I think
Finkenstein was such an advisor. It's horrible. Like yeah, or like the Polish president when he was in the middle of his campaign to get re-elected, like the Polish far-right president, right before the final voting, he left to the U.S. and met with Trump when he was still president. You know, these things are very linked.
yeah.
Yeah, it is a
And
very international
I
project
mean,
for
just
it.
despite the fact that like Trump had close ties to Russia, his whole cabinet.
Yeah, of course. That's why people will say, "Oh, if
Oh,
that's why people
Russia.
that's why people unironically will say, if only Trump stayed in office, Russia would not have attacked Ukraine because Trump was a strongman leader and he would have done the perfect negotiation with Russia and Russia would not have attacked. But we have weak Biden, so Russia. That's a narrative that we have heard as well, right? That is a narrative that we have heard from the far righters.
Yeah, I think this is something that's hard to talk about.
Yeah, Orban, of course, also had close ties with Russia, Putin. That ironically enough created a divide between Hungary and Poland a bit because no matter how far right Poland will go, Poland will at least openly not have good relations with Russia because Poland has had too big of a history with Russia to do that.
Mhm.
So even that their most far rightist, Poland will not go the Orban route.
Interesting.
Yeah, that did create a bit of a crack in the relations between Polish government and Orban. Even though at first Poland really, um even though Poland did try to play defense for Orban at first when he gave support for Putin, you know.
Mm.
But basically, the leader of Poland, Jarosław Kaczynski, did say we are going to create a second Budapest here in Poland.
Yeah. Another thing that I noticed when we talk about sexism
Right?
and like the biological essentialism and
Right.
strict gender roles,
I
you see
mean,
that play out.
biological and essential is basically like the last thing that those sort of people cling on to, right? Even though,
Mhm.
like, we know that sex is a
When
lot
you
more complicated than what they claim to be.
Right. So when you look at one thing that I noticed, like within my own transition, and now that I, I've throughout the years. And one thing that I didn't like, I was kind of getting into feminism and like kind of breaking down sexism.
Right.
When you look at the UK,
Yeah.
and what they're trying to do with like, and the United States is catching on to this, but like with their whole like, they're treating a haircut as transition,
I'm sorry?
or growing your hair out or getting a haircut as gender transition. This
Yeah.
is all this, so it's not just cis sexist for trans people.
It's ridiculous.
It's sexist
It's
for
sexist
cis
in a
men and
very
cis women.
traditional way.
Yeah, it's women. It's the whole, women have long hair, men have short hair. Like, I know growing up, like in that whole like strict environment of gender
Yeah.
roles and like this whole thing,
Yeah.
what you're forced into is like I was constantly, I always wanted to grow my hair out.
Right. But you were
That's just
pressured into cutting them, right?
always being pressured into cutting my hair.
Right.
And now that I'm an adult, I'm transitioning like, there are a lot of like masculine men that have long hair that I like, like, and this is like the stupidest, like, narrow scope of like what is attractive in men and women and like how they should present and like everything. It's so sexist. And this is kind of a tip for like, that I'll like tell like people like younger trans people like trying to get through things and like transitioning. Like, you're a trans woman and you're growing out your hair, and like the workplace is like, why do you have long hair, or why do you have this, why you just, you don't even have to come out at work if that's not what you want at the time. This is what I did. Okay, just hear me out. You're being sexist.
Yeah.
That's what I told them at work. I said, you're just being sexist. And that shut them up. They didn't want that. Like, they realized the implication of just like telling, without me being out as trans and like growing
Right.
out my
Right.
hair.
Right. Right.
I was just like, you're just being sexist.
Exactly. But that's because
And
the
that's how it interacts, right?
yeah. But that's because the right-wing project ideally goes beyond just genociding trans people. It goes like the ideal state of the far right project is putting men and women into very specific roles in society, you know?
Exactly. Yep. Yep.
So that's a
It's
whole system, you
it's a,
know? The
yeah,
plans for
it'll
trans
drive us
people
all
is
backwards.
just part of the whole design, right?
Mm-hmm.
It has to go back to certain very, like, ideally, even like tomboyish, quote unquote, women would not be tolerated in society, you know?
Yeah. So in a lot of ways, like this whole movement is not just fear. Like, it obviously, transphobia isn't just fear of trans people, but
Yeah, of
like
course.
on its very minor levels, it's just like, I don't know, trans people are weird. I don't you know,
Hmm.
I just don't get them around me. I just
Yeah, but that's
shooting at home.
confusion,
I
not
whatever.
that's more confusion and outright
Yeah,
bigotry, right?
right. But in its most sinister level is cis sexism, where it's just like, you don't exist.
Yeah,
This
exactly.
is,
Yeah,
you know.
you're
So it
delusional.
is that
Not
like,
just you don't exist, you are being delusional, right?
hmm hmm
You're living a
So
fantasy.
I think it's, I th the reason I want to talk about this is like, I think what we need to focus on is not like because like, I don't know, the milder forms of transphobia for me anymore are just like, I
Right.
can brush off like nothing.
Which of course
What is
keep in mind that there are also like you said about typical like regular cis women, right?
mm,
For example, in my day-to-day life, I'm pretty much not out to anyone, right? Like I quote unquote boy mode on my daily life, right?
mm,
I present pretty boily. I boil. I boy mode, you know. And
boy, oh,
today, like, I guess the only explanation is that some sort of certain things just uh, slip through, or just like how do you say um, what's the word is like I don't know, because apparently my mom told me when I visited her at the clinic today, right,
yeah.
that the lady at the reception asked mom earlier today, so when's your daughter gonna pay for your stay, you know?
Yeah.
And I basically function as a man in daily, and still my mom got asked today, so when's your daughter gonna pay? So I guess, you know,
Oh,
so certain
that's good.
things sort of just I don't know, maybe, you know, I don't know.
That's cool.
That's
I'm
kind
glad
of
you.
interesting little trivia that mom decided to share with me today. You know, that she got asked when's the daughter gonna pay, you know?
Did that warm you up a little bit?
Yeah, it's pretty interesting considering that I didn't actually try to present to them as a girl in any way, you know?
I wonder if she insisted on that.
No, no, she didn't. She didn't. Nobody said anything. Nobody like mentioned anything of the sort. So that just came out of
That's nice.
nowhere, you know,
That's nice.
on
Yeah.
that lady's part. So
Um.
yeah, like it's a
Yeah.
nice little trivia for today, you know.
Yeah. That's great. Um. Yeah. So, like with the Limkin thing, like that's why the that's why the gender critical movement is so genocidal. It's like it's not. We need to we have to focus more on like not focus on more subtler uh, variations of
Well, there are
transphobia.
like the main variations right now, right?
Yeah, like
We're not against trans people. We just want to focus on keeping children safe, or we want to keep focused on keeping sports fair, or we want to, you know, you can just multiply example upon example, right?
yeah. I think when you as we talk to people, I think I think it will resonate better with people, and we need to address things more from not like a like to say, oh, you're just being transphobic or this or that. Like
Mm-hmm.
I want people to start using the word cis sexism more, where it is the more systemic a thing that is like that will like wipe us out. Like
Right.
you know what I mean?
Yeah,
It,
yeah,
it's
yeah.
not it, it it's not the trans people are icky thing.
Mm-hmm.
It's trans people are degenerate. They don't exist. We need to erase this whole gender ideology, quote unquote. Like that is more insidious version that we need to tackle. If somebody's just like, I don't know, trans women are trans women. Let's let's just back off like a little bit with like those kinds of things a little bit, like
Hmm.
where it's like where people are just like, well, trans women are just trans women versus trans women are women and like all this kind of stuff. It's like let's try to like back away from that slightly and just be like, okay, here is the systematic thing that is going to wipe my existence off this planet and talk about things this way um, with people, you know. Um,
Yeah, some gender critical clearly said that transgenderism needs to be eradicated.
right. Yeah, like yeah, because they just it's just an ideology, it's just a belief,
Right.
crazy belief in people's heads, They you know
Clearly
that
aims to destroy trans people as long
mhm.
as they are trans. Right.
And the thing is, and the way that you can explain it to people is just like, even if you've got like just somebody that's just like, I don't know about this trans stuff, blah blah blah. Like,
Right. Only accepting them living if they are no longer trans.
okay, I guess you're trans, I guess you exist, and I gotta like live with you, but like I don't know, like if these people like you've got to like explain like with the if you can get across to them that it's like, look, I understand you're like skittish or whatever, but they aren't just like, they're not trying to like ban me from this
Right.
or that. They're not targeting me. They're writing me out of existence. And every bill that you kind of feel wishy-washy about, you need to tell people like, this is precedent to write me out of existence.
I highly
Even
recommend.
even if even if it, like this will probably never affect you, but these bills aren't just saying like, well, we need to like we just don't want you here or we don't want you there. Every one of these is not like banning the trans person. They
Right.
are writing me out of existence.
Right. But
And
also says,
each one that goes through creates precedent
yeah, for
to write me
more.
out of
Yeah, yeah,
existence.
yeah. Katie Montgomery does a good track of British gender criticals on these comments.
Yeah.
I highly recommend the Transatlantic Show in YouTube to follow. They're doing
And
great advocacy. Like, okay, by the way, Lonerbox accepted that gender critical movement is genocidal after Katie Montgomery pushed back on his stances. Of course, the problem with Lonerbox is that he will begrudgingly accept that a movement is genocidal, but he will not accept that there is a genocide actually
yeah.
happening, right? Like he will say, yeah, those people are genocidal, they would love to do a genocide, but there is nothing actually happening, right? That's
Yeah.
like, I think that's the problem with
You know what
Lonerbox.
the problem is? That mindset. It is it's the liberal slash moderate mindset that says things will just be okay in time.
Right,
That, like it doesn't, they don't recognize that they just see things in like waves and like everything will go, we'll take forward steps and like they'll try to take us a couple of backward steps, but then we'll go 10 steps and like progress is just always exponential. We'll always get to the better place.
right.
Like that's their mindset, right? And they don't recognize how fragile things are.
Yeah, exactly. You need to fight to not just get things to be better, but you also need to fight not to let things roll back, right?
You can like they're not just like taking us to
You're
like,
not
oh
once a thing happens,
yeah,
it's not
yeah,
guaranteed to stay
yeah.
forever,
They're
right?
not just like, well, well, trans people in sports, okay. Like we're just gonna ban you out of sports.
Right.
And for the vast majority of trans people, oh my God, fine. If you just want to do that for now, but leave me alone everywhere else. As long as you're not like writing me out of existence as you do it, and you're just like, for fuck's sake, like that's where we're at. Like, but they're not just doing that.
No, I actually don't. I don't think so. I think we should not sit on any ground, to be honest. I
Oh,
think
I know
once,
that that's me too. That's me
like,
too. But like, because of that reason, because the
right,
the grounds are that they're writing, they're separating, they're creating a wedge to say,
right.
to enforce this sexism. No matter how you look at it, they're not saying, like, if they were to write a bill that says bans the trans woman out of sports, they couldn't write it. It would be obviously discriminatory.
Yeah, of course. Yeah, of
It,
course. It's
it,
just like
it's
with the,
it
as
could
I
be
said,
they could literally write a bill, one sentence that says
this
we
is,
would we
this
would like to
is,
ban trans women out of women's sports,
but
and that would be the bill. That's
this
not the
is,
bill.
this is not how modern day bigotry plays out in general, right? Like, this is
Right,
not how systemic racism plays out either, right? Like within the
right,
bills. Like
yeah,
you target, like, this was caught, like that is that it targeted people of color with laser precision, but it also, technically speaking, did not mention people of color directly, right? It just happened to target the places in which people of color would vote. It just happened to make it harder for people of color to drive to those places to be able to cast their vote, etc., right? But it also did not specifically say we want to ban people of color from voting, right?
right. And you know what else? You know what's interesting about that? Um, people don't. A lot of people didn't realize. Like I brought this up is like, voter ID laws affect trans people too.
Yeah.
Right? It doesn't just affect POC people, but it also affects trans people.
So when you spend more time being concerned about trans people pushing for using genocide than tackle gender critical genocidal narratives, there's something wrong with that. Yeah, of course. Yeah, yeah.
It yeah, like there are a lot of systems that interact with each other. Like um a lot of trans people are poor, a lot of black people are poor.
Yeah, you
And then
can.
they gerrymander, and then they put
Yeah,
voter ID laws,
you can.
and they're
You
fucking
can
with
get away
all. Like,
with targeting a population by targeting a general feature of that population instead
mhm,
of that population directly. Yeah, exactly. This is like the modern face of systemic bigotry, right?
correct. Yeah. Mhm,
And this is what we need to focus on pushing against
mhm.
internationally, right? We have to make it an international project, right?
I mean, um before the second push of like, or even like in the middle of like the Trump era, it was like I was screaming. I wanted to like just scream like, where is the women's march, including like trans women, like
Mm-hmm.
because it's whether cis women really recognize it unless they're talked to. Like, you've got to, like, you can't just attack one
Like,
groups. If you explain it to them, it's like you can't just like target one group's bodily autonomy and expect
right,
like
right.
that
Also,
degradation of human rights. I was like, I knew Roe was going to be overturned as they were attacking trans people the way they
right,
were. I was
yeah.
like, they're attacking bodily
Bodily
autonomy.
autonomy, yeah. And keep in mind, even when we had like the very explicit trans ban from the military, right?
Mhm.
Even then, people tried to reframe it as to be the more insidious thing of it's not a trans ban from the military. It's just that the military has introduced certain specific requirements to be in the military, and trans people just happen not to fit those criteria, right?
Yeah. It's so insidious, right?
Yeah, it was reframed to be something like that by many people, right? When they try to play defense. It's not that trans people cannot be in the military. It's just that that you have to meet certain criteria to be in the military, right?
And we know that like trans people may be have like symptoms of dysphoria and these
Right,
things,
right,
right?
right. Those which are
Yeah,
mental symptoms, right?
their mental state may not be very good, and they may not be military ready or whatever they want
Yeah,
to come
but
up with.
the fact is that many trans people did pass those criteria and
Mhm.
just like it just became like many people who were accepted already were fired from the military, right? But they passed through those things before and were okay to serve. And other people were like, the military should not spend money on things like hormones for trans people, while a lot of money is being um, spent
Been done
on crap like,
Viagra.
yeah, Viagra, right, right, yeah, 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 exactly. You know?
Like the over, like I think it was like 5 times more the dollar value on Viagra.
Yeah, it's like
How many
total,
times?
total dishonest nonsense, right?
Right, you definitely need Viagra in the military.
Oh,
Like,
yeah, yeah. We aren't
um,
banning trans people, just people who meet the criteria of being trans. Yeah, exactly.
mhm.
Like, so we definitely need to get more on board with what's happening, you know?
Yeah. If I could like bounce just briefly onto another topic,
Yeah,
uh, it's related because it's what they've done, at least in this one companion bill in my state, so I can talk about this.
okay.
That is it's just, I'm sure you've seen me talk about it on my server a lot
All right.
and throughout, because it's one thing that I have been wanting to dismantle as a systemic problem so bad. Um, what they've done is right, affirming your trans child as child abuse
All right.
while saying it's okay to abuse your child.
Yeah, because denying your child care, denying your child the ability to be themselves is basically abuse, right?
Basically, it's not just that, because they ignore symptoms of dysphoria.
Yeah,
They don't mention dysphoria. They write cis sexism into the bill.
yeah, yeah, of course.
But it's not even just that. It's that they want to make sure that spanking and assaulting your child is legal. They want to beat the queer out of your children.
Oh, yeah.
And it's something that a lot of people don't realize is that when you look at the studies on, and this is,
Of
where are you
course,
seeing all of these bills pop up?
of course, keep in mind, this opens the door to, once again, as I said, returning to the traditional model when physically disciplining your child is the norm, right?
This is the Christian nationalist aspect of it,
Right, when you
because
just it just
what
becomes the
they
norm
what
once again to just beat your child when the child is
they
disobedient, right?
POC people,
And of
disabled people,
yeah, and of
queer
course,
people,
I've
anybody
already
that acts, you have to discipline that. You have to beat it out of them.
yeah, and
They're obviously just not fitting your
keep in
thing. So
mind,
you just
keep in mind, I've already spoken with conservatives that openly told me that yeah, of course, children are property of their parents, so
Mhm,
you
mhm.
know,
Yeah, and that's exactly how they treat. Like this is the I grew up in the Bible Belt, and it's called the Bible Belt for a reason. It's because they beat people with belts, spoons, hands. They whether it's a woman, a child, a black
right,
person, it originated from slavery.
yeah.
And everybody in the Midwest and the South of US is just assaulting people. They're physically beating people to conform.
Yeah.
And when you look at studies of children that are spanked or whatever else,
I
whatever
mean,
way that they want to, whether it's a light swat, it doesn't even have to make a mark. They'll do all these arguments about it. It's sexual abuse. It's
yeah.
treated as sexual abuse
I
in the
mean,
mind of the child.
I'm,
And like they're actually that's the actual child sexual abuse, like the whole freaking narrative that they're darvoing across the whole nation of
yeah.
child abuse.
But I'm
They are
actually,
because they actually want to just abuse children the real way.
I'm actually surprised that you actually need a study to demonstrate that beating a child is not good. You know?
No, but long term, like we have studies where it is registered as sexual assault.
Yeah.
And so that they are literally like this is just it's so disgusting, and that's
Yeah.
why we have to like
Push against it. This is all we have.
this is one of my avenues because like
Right.
if we are to fight this narrative that they're pushing,
Right.
the only way that you stop it is to flip it on its head.
Yeah.
You can't play defense on it. You have to
Yeah, of
say
course. No, yeah,
like
of course.
all these people, like literally every person that is like laughing on Fox News, like, oh, yeah, correct my child in the schools. Like, I'll sign the paper so you can hit them there, and then
Yeah,
when they
hit
come
them with
home,
a
I'll hit
paddle, right?
you. Like, these people don't. They never like from child marriage to
Beauty
children can consent.
pageants.
Children can consent at 13. Like
Right.
all like they are
Matt
disgusting
Walsh's.
people. In addition to like the whole groom like in addition to the whole groomer narrative is a complete
Yeah.
projection,
Yeah, yeah, exactly. Yeah, of course. Yeah, 100%.
complete projection on queer people.
Yeah.
It is also that they actually want to beat it out of you
Yeah.
as a, like literally sexually abuse you that way too. They want to
Yeah. I
physically
mean,
hit you,
children
beat it out of
marriages.
you.
Children can be pregnant, no problem. They should come,
It,
like, give birth.
it is banned. It is illegal in 63 countries, and the UN calls out the United States for doing this. and making it okay. 19 states, the Bible Belt, it is legal in public schools. All 50 states, you can beat the shit out of your child all you want.
With a paddle, right?
However you want. The police don't have any. You will have child services being able to do nothing about you.
Excuse me
Hitting
for a
your
moment.
child.
Excuse me for a moment, okay? Continue, and I will be right back, okay? I have to go to the toilet.
Yeah. Hello, chat. So yeah, I mean, I feel so pressured to testify. And like, I just don't like for these bills that are hitting my state again. They've coupled this together, like the literal Darvo, like just it is just all in one bill, and it it makes me want to scream. I just want to go into court, testify against these bills, and tell them how disgusting it is. Thanks. It's really a tough spot. Like, I'm already in a tough spot. Like, you know, I don't want to like get out in front of and testify, but I know I could speak to people. Like, I've got the vitriol to do it, but you know, it's just in prior session, I wrote to them like crazy. I got people to call and we did like break down, like we stopped them from passing anything. It was a whole way, like some of the worst. And people don't talk about Missouri enough. We often bring up like Texas and Florida, which are the worst. One thing that people don't realize is how much they're communicating and seeing what's going on in each state and how they can use that. And the attorney generals are talking to each other. They're coming up with, like, if they can't get it done in legislation, the attorney generals are like coming up with shit together. They're colluding. They're writing things together. Like,
I am back. Come
on. Yeah, I was talking before you got back, Alicia. I was talking about how a lot of people really don't bring up Missouri enough. Like, we fought off the wave, and it's going to be okay now.
Right.
Like, Missouri had one of the worst waves of anti-trans legislation in the country,
Mm-hmm.
and one of bill that was unique to all others across the country, where they wanted to raise the transition age to 25.
Right.
That doesn't come up anywhere else. That has not come up anywhere else except Florida, where they said 18 and then we won't cover it under public health care.
Right.
But they wanted to raise it to 25, and that's why, and they used the whole like your brain isn't fully developed until 25 shit to do it as their ammunition. And that's why I've been wanting to make sure that people are ready for this argument, because it's going to come up again.
And again.
It's going to come up again. They're going to say, your brain isn't fully developed, so you can't actually know your gender until you're 25 years old.
And of course,
which is complete bollocks. It's complete bollocks, but they're going to keep trying that.
Yeah.
So you can go to war, you can drink, you can smoke, you can vote,
you can get pregnant.
You can't know your gender, and you can't like do anything about that until you're 25 plus as a trans person, and only a trans person, right? It's they're gonna try it again. So it's something that we have to talk about and be ready for
Yeah.
on like this whole like when they're talking about consent. They obviously have horrible ideas about consent and all these things, but
Right. And phew.
what we have to think about a little bit, and I've kind of discussed it with like and like the Avi server,
Avi?
uh,
Who?
Avi, forget what his anyway.
The biologist?
Yeah,
Okay.
that Avi.
Right, right. Why?
Try to get to bounce off, but like what is the actual? Even if like let's say that people really don't know, even cis people don't really understand their gender all the way up till 18 years old, and that's when they really know that they're a girl or whatever, fully, or well, like that's when they know that they're definitely a girl into womanhood and all this other stuff.
Hmm.
Let's just take that for a moment.
Right.
What would be the actual difference between 18 and 25? Like what amount of like development that we don't already recognize happens amongst everybody else, that what minuscule amount of that development actually happens between 18 and 25?
Right.
And we need to be able to like be like pretty little. It's not like you haven't like figured most things
Anything
out
else?
about
Right.
yourself.
Right.
Like especially simple things like you could, despite like the indoctrination that we face, which is the primary contributor, of course, to like trans people not figuring things out till later in life,
Yeah.
which they want that anyway.
Yeah.
They just don't want you to
They
ever
want
realize.
trans
They don't
people
ever want you
to.
to exist. Like they'll
I mean,
make sure you don't.
the ideal
Yeah.
state is for trans people to think that it's not really worth doing anything because
Mhm.
no one will ever accept it, right?
Yeah, and I think like Aaron Reed did a good job of talking about this. Is like, especially is like when we look at like these studies, like they don't. We have to just like tell them it's just like you see better success rates, lesser deep like
Keep in mind that all of those things are just
when you try to put the clamps on it, the only thing that it does is exacerbate the issue. Like it makes it, you're actually increasing the problem that you're trying to prevent
keep in
by
mind
doing
that
that.
is very transparently just all BS, right? Because you
Mhm.
cannot say in one breath that a person is not fit to decide on their gender until 25, but
Mhm.
people are fine to get pregnant at 13, get married at 13, and
Or be
like
charged
give
as an
birth.
adult, or be charged as an adult as a
Right,
15-year-old
right?
black kid,
Like that
right?
you can like give birth as a child, but at the same time, like
Mhm.
it's really incoherent, right? Because
Mhm.
they say that only women can give birth, for example, right? Women. So the person needs to know that they're women, right? To give
Yeah.
birth. But then they also say that until 25 you cannot know your gender, but it's fine to give birth as a woman, as a child, right?
Mhm.
So it's completely BS,
Yeah.
right?
The weirdest thing about it is like, it's like, why are you so obsessed with my fertility?
Oh
Right?
yeah, it's like that's because you give birth to more loyal um, nationals when you do that, right?
Yeah. One thing that I was explained to here the normies, this idiot legislators that are just like getting some of them are really idiots. Like some of these your legislators, they're really idiots
Right,
on the issues. The legislators themselves,
right,
even some of the Republican legislators, they're just ignorant on the issue. They
right,
really are. They're getting they're getting bills pushed onto them. Like they're like, we need you to introduce this bill. It's so important. Like
right,
you've got the gender criticals, the
right, right,
Christian
right, right,
nationalists.
right.
They're like, we need you to put this on. Like we need to vote on this, and we need they're getting it's a very powerful network that are just like they could have support from various attorney generals from across the states. They're like, we need you to introduce these bills, this set, and here's how we suggest that they're written and everything else. Like they've got it all boiled down,
Right.
right? So okay, we'll introduce the bill, but they have
Yeah.
no like they don't understand the implications. They don't.
They don't, or
Sometimes
they don't care,
they
right?
don't care. Yeah, they just have a very okay, whatever.
And of course, keep in mind that when it comes to your question, why are people so interested in your fertility? I think Russia has actually uh, delivered the answer, provided the answer to your question directly by giving the Russian soldiers to the ability to freeze their sperm for free, right?
Mm, mm.
Because when you have reproduction, you have more loyal
Yeah,
citizens of the state, and you know the wheel keeps turning, right?
oh, we need to worry about the birth rates.
Right,
We
right,
need
right.
to. Yeah,
We
it's
need
the
more
whole.
loyal citizens, basically.
We need to make sure the white people are breeding and
Right, right,
keep the immigrants out of the country and
right, right. We need to keep the nation pure, right?
right. No, I mean that's one aspect of the cringe, but like it's
Well, there are many
um,
aspects,
they're
and they are
also
all interconnected. So,
yeah, it's also just really creepy. It's just
yeah,
like
of course.
the creepy parts of it.
And then they, as you said, project it onto others and try to say, no, no, we're not the creeps. It's the LGBT that are the creeps,
Oh,
not
we're
us.
just concerned. Like, how could you make this decision to like lose your fertility? Don't you want to plant your seed or be
Right.
inseminated? Like, whoa, but honey, that's my decision. What do you have any say about that?
Yeah, yeah, exactly.
Gross. Yeah, it's just it's
Right.
because like they
It's all
really don't
smoke
care.
screen for their fields, right?
Yeah.
Well, I guess we will need to wrap it up since it's 4:15,
Okay.
and I will have to go to my mom tomorrow as well, because
Okay.
she'll be going out of the clinic soon, and there are certain preparations that I have to do make at home to make
Hmm.
sure that she'll be able to function properly when she's here.
Yeah. Is she gonna need physical therapy or is she already?
Oh, she's having one now, but she'll continue it. It's in some capacity, right?
Yeah.
Relearning to walk.
Yeah. I'm glad you got support for her and everything.
Yeah, we would have been really screwed.
Yeah.
Like, Mom was in that fighting against the old regime in the 80s, right?
Mm-hmm.
So she has this special paper. She's treated like a combatant, basically like a veteran, you know?
Oh, wow.
She's like the status of a veteran because she fought against the old regime, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And theoretically speaking, she has free healthcare, and she theoretically speaking does not have to wait in line for it, right?
Yeah.
And she was like told in the clinic, yeah, nice, you've got this legitimation that as a vet that gets you healthcare outside of the queue, right?
Mm-hmm.
So you are the person number 201 in the queue outside of the queue,
Oh my gosh.
which means you will be eligible for free, um, like uh, for a free rehab somewhere, sometime around April next year.
Oh my gosh.
So yeah. So basically, if we didn't have the money to do it private, we'd be screwed. Like,
Oh my gosh.
yeah,
That's
it
awful.
would have been like, yeah, it is like, yeah. So it's a really great that that it worked out with the fundraiser. You know,
Yeah, for sure.
it would have been really not good at all.
Mm-hmm.
Well then, thank you for
Have a-
coming. Thank
Yeah,
you
I hope
for
everybody enjoyed the combo.
yeah. So that's my another segment that I have from today, apart from the heated Steven one, you know. Have you seen any of the Steven segment?
Oh, I'll watch it.
Yeah, you should watch it when I prepare it. I'll create a juicy thumbnail. There's like,
Yeah.
yeah. I think I have like an image in my mind how it will look like. Okay. Keep
Okay.
it.
Have a good rest,
Yeah.
Lucy.
Good night, you Glory. Come on.
Come on.
Yeah. Come on.
Come on.
Yeah. Okay.
Good night.
Yeah. Good night. Press disconnect. Okay.
Okay.
Yeah. Come on. And now I press happy face. So I thank everybody for coming. Maybe we will reach 500 subs someday. Come on. And I wish you a good night. We pass and stream. And I wish you all a happy giggling. Come on.